names. So properties are a very important feature of JavaFX. So it allows us to have an object to store a value. Not only this, we can also monitor this value. If there is any change to this value, we can attach some listener to this property to get updates whenever this property changes. And also, this property allows us to do binding. We cannot do binding between normal objects or a normal attributes with simple data types. Like I cannot take an integer attributes and another integer attributes and do binding. They must be properties. So properties are prerequisite to use binding. That's why we make our class attributes properties first, then we can take advantage of binding. And if we look deeply, so a property is nothing but an observable. If you recall the analogy of observable, where we have some kind of celebrity posting some updates, and then we have some fans subscribing to those updates. And whenever there is an update, they receive those updates coming from the observable. So with the property, any change to the property, this will raise a property change event, and the observers or the listeners get notified, and they can make use of that new value. So that is the idea of a property. So if I want to take a simple class and convert it to a property, if I take simple class and convert it to use properties, I follow this, how many steps here? Follow 4 steps that I will explain shortly and then go and do it through an example together. So first, I change the data type of attributes to property data types. I change the constructor to initialize and instantiate and initialize the class properties. I change the getters and setters to use get and set of the property, and I add public getter methods for properties. This might not make a lot of sense, but through an example you will see it's very simple. Okay, so let's take a small example. So let me go to this slider example we were working on. Let me create a new example very quickly. So I'll create a new package. I will call it binding example. Binding example. Okay. Here's my binding example. And inside this binding example, I create a class. Here's a class. I will just call this class friend. Here's friend class. I just want to keep it very, very simple. This class will have 2 attributes, string name, which is a private string name, and the other one is private int age. Just 2 attributes. You already know these are, according to encapsulation, I make these attributes flat, and then I provide a constructor, and I provide getters and setters. We already know how to do this. So here is my constructor that takes 2 parameters to construct these instances of friend. And here are my getters and setters. So I'll go ahead and generate getters and setters. Oh, sorry. Source, getters and setters. Yeah, that's it. Here's my class. Now, if I can create a main method. Here is my app. And as you know, I can come here and say friend, my friend, new friend. then whatever I put here, for example. Yeah. Here I create an object, and then let's put some toString here. Here is my override, and then I'll put here public string toString. And then here I return string dot format. I'll make it here name s, and then age d. Then I'll pass here the name and the age. Yep. Okay. And here I created a new object. Then I can do system.out.println, and I'll display my friend. Yep. So we know how to do this. We are expert in this now. That's it. I created an instance, displayed it. But this instance, if I go to my friend dot get name, because it is not a property, I cannot listen to changes. And if I have some user interface, I cannot bind this to my user interface. I cannot make use of binding. So in another way, let's create a user interface just to make this more clear. Let's create a user interface. So here it is, create, and I go for other, a new fxml file, and I'll choose the layout is grid pane, and then I will call it here friend editor. Okay, then I'll open it in scene builder. I can just remove this, add it again, grid pane. When I add it, automatically adds a couple of rows and columns. It just makes it easier. Okay, so what I will do here, put a label. Here's my label here. I'll call it here name, and put my another label which is age. Okay, and I put text field. Text field, here is my first text field, and here is my second text field. So the first one, if I go to code, I'll make it name field, or name text field, just for short, name field, and this one I will call it age text field or age field. Yep. Let me reduce the size of this. Okay, and let me add a button. Here's my button here, and I will call it submit, and it is default button. Okay, what else I need to do? Yes, in this here, I don't need to call it, but I need to handle the on-click. So I will write here an event handler to basically handle submitting the form. So I fill up the form and then submit it. So handle submit. Are we ready? Maybe one more here. I will put binding is this is the package, and this one is my friend. I think everything is ready. These are the fields that I care about in the code, so I named them. This button that I care about to handle the click, I already gave it an event handler. And just to confirm that everything is done, I just go to view, show the controller code, and it looks like I have everything there I need. So I'll copy this, go to my Eclipse. Let me refresh this so we see the updates. And then I'll go ahead and paste my controller. Here's my controller. Now the Eclipse doesn't know what action event means, so let's give it a little bit of help. So this action event is coming from JavaFX event package. Please don't choose any other package except the ones starting with JavaFX. Okay, that's it. We are ready. So what I will do now, I will just see here. My goal is I have an object, and I want that object to display it in a form and allow the user to change it. And when they change it, I will change my object. Yes? So instead of using scanner and those black scary screen, I will use a graphic user interface. That's my goal. So what I will do here, I will create this initialization method, which is public void initialize. And you need to watch me here. I always misspell it. Is it good? I think so. Yeah. You need to be initialized, otherwise it will not be auto-called when the view is loaded. And what I will do here, I'll basically come here and create my friend when the form is initialized. Yeah. And then what I do with this my friend, how do I show this details of my friend in the form? How do I put the age, the name Ahmed and the age 30 to show it for the user in the form? What do you think? We set the text. Thank you very much. That's it. Very easy. So I'll do here name dot set name field dot set text, and I'll give it what? My friend dot get name. Yeah, good, easy. Now the age field dot set text. Okay, my friend dot get age. Now there is a bit of problem because this one is integer, this one is expecting a string. It's not happy, so I can use here string dot value of, and then give it the integer, and this function will convert it for me to a string. Yeah, everything is happy now. Okay, now to load the form and show it to the user, let's not waste time on this. Let me copy it from one of the existing apps. So I'll copy it from here, paste it. Okay, and simply here instead of age editor, I will call it friend editor. And this is binding example. It's all good. Yeah. So hopefully we are ready to go. And that's it. Here is my object. And I managed to take an instance of this object, put the name attributes, the value of the name attribute, put it in the name text field, and the value of the age, put it on the age text field. Yes? Now, what is my goal now is when I submit, if I do any change, I made a mistake. He's only lucky, 23. Okay, so now save, nothing is happening. What is my goal is to take whatever the user have typed, and I want to take it and put it on the object that I have created. Yeah. Okay, that's what so how to do this? What do I need to do to achieve this? I need to handle this event. So I already have an event handler here. I just need to type in here the code to handle the submit. Okay, there's one little problem here. I need to access this variable, but this variable is only accessible within this method. So it's better for me to declare it up here. I'll declare it here and initialize it here. Okay. Now, when the form is submitted, what should I do? When the form is submitted?
I should update
update my friend details. So I'll go to my friend, and there is set name. What will be the name? Is basically the name field dot get name. No, dot get text, sorry. Get text. Yep, very good. And then my friend dot set age, and then age field dot get text. Okay, usually I just prefer to use integer. Many ways of doing it, but this one is good enough. Value of, I give it a string, it returns me an integer. Yeah. That's it. And then I will display it just to make sure it has really changed. Okay. So let us now run. Hopefully everything will be okay. So here is the initial values, and I change the name, and I change the age, and save, and you can see the name has changed and the age has changed. Yes? So I'm doing this manually through event handling. So when the form loads, I get the instance of the object and read the values from the object and assign them to the UI elements. And when the form submits, I do the reverse. I read from the UI elements or the UI components and I write to the object. Is clear? So let me visualize this. I just want to make sure it's clear. So in here, what I have in memory, I have an object in memory, which is basically my friend object. And this friend object in memory, it basically has a name, and the name is, let's say, Ahmed. Okay, and it has age, and the age is 30. So all this is happening in memory. Okay, now what I have here, user interface will not go into the memory to change things or to view things. We have to provide them a nice graphical user interface. And this is where JavaFX can help us. This is our nice graphical interface. And this is my student, no, not student, friend. This is my friend. Editor phone. And then in here I have a name label, and a text field, and a text field. And I have an age label and a text field. And then I have a submit button. Yes? So I have an object in memory, and I have a form the user is watching, is seeing in front of the screen. So to make this experience meaningful, when the form loads, I have to take the attribute, the value of the attribute of the object, and write them in the form. And when the user does any changes and submit, take the values the user have entered in the form and I'll write them back to the object. Is this clear? Okay. So when do I do the writing? When do I do the writing of the values in the object? I write them to the text field. When do I do this? In the initialize, when the form is first loaded. So in the initialize method, I do this. I basically, that's why it's called initialize. I initialize my form by extracting some values from the object and writing them to the form UI components. And when do I change the object? When do I change the attributes of the object? When I press submit, I have an event handler here on action event handler, like for example, submit handler or handle submit. And what do I do here? Yes, I read the new values the user have entered in the text field, or whatever it could be. Could be combo box or radio button, whatever components I'm using. I read the value and then set those values on the object. Is clear? This will work, this is fine. In a simple form, no problem, it will work, no issues. But when you get to a large form with hundreds of fields, then it's a bit tedious, this writing this code twice. And it's not very, nothing here very smart or anything like extraordinary. All it's doing, getting values from the object, writing them to the UI components, getting values from the object, writing them to UI components, and then on the submit, I'm doing the reverse, reading from the UI components, writing to the object. This type of repetitive works, the developers, they don't enjoy doing. Okay, and usually they end up pushing it to some new member of the team. Okay, here is a new member, let's push to them these non-interesting tasks. But luckily, with JavaFX, we can do it in a much better way, using binding. Yeah, so we can do binding. We can bind. So instead of doing it manually this way, in initialize, I initialize the component UI with the attributes of the object, and on submit, I synchronize the two. Basically what I'm doing, I'm synchronizing manually. I'm synchronizing the UI with the object. Yes, keeping them in sync. Okay, now a better way of doing it, instead of doing this stuff, instead of doing it this way, using events handling, I just define a binding. Sorry, it's getting a little bit messy. I just define the binding between these attributes and this UI component. The name attribute, I bind it with the text property of the text field. And I bind the age attributes with the age property, with the text property of the age text field. Yes, that's what I'll be doing. Okay, and it will be two-way binding, which means any change to the UI component will be reflected in the object, and any changes in the object will be reflected on the UI component. It's clear? That's what my goal. But what we just saw before, what is the prerequisite for us to use binding? We have to have properties. Yeah, I cannot just come, let's try it. Let's try to trick JavaFX somehow and say, oh, okay, no problem. Let me go and say name field dot text property. So JavaFX people, they made the text attribute of the text field as a property. Why they made it as a property instead of a normal attribute? To be able to bind. Okay, no problem. Let's say here property. Okay, and I'll say here bind. And then it says to me, you have to give me an observable, which means you have to give me something that can erase an event, a change event, when it's changed. And I say, okay, no problem. Let me give you something. Try to use it and establish the binding. I'll give you my friend dot get name. It will say to me, you must be joking. This one is a property. This one is a normal string. Yeah, and it says, no, I can't do this. Yes, that's what it's saying. So what is the solution? Yes, change the attributes of my class. Instead of being a normal attributes that we saw before, change them to what? To properties. Okay. So first, let us remind ourselves the concept of a property. Remember, we did it before. What is the concept of a property? No, but what is the concept? What is the idea behind property? So remember the discussion we had. If I have here something like int x equal 10, Yes, int x equal 10, this x is a variable. What can we do with this variable? Write to it and read from it. Only I can store value or retrieve the value. So it's something like this. It's a place in memory, referred to as x. I can write to it a value by using the assign operator. I can write to it a value. I can come back later and read the value. So I can either write or read. Can I do anything else interesting? No, that's all I can do. Okay. Now, what property is, I come to that variable and I wrap it into an object called a property. And it makes this a normal, nobody cares about variable to a celebrity, where it becomes monitorable. We can monitor it in the sense that when this value change, this property raise change events. Change events. Saying, oh, X has changed. It's changed from 10 to 20. Whoever is interested, let them subscribe and help themselves. Do whatever they want to do with the change. That's what the concept of a property. So property, it makes X what? In one word. It makes the variable observable. That's it. So property, the role of property is to make the object or the attributes or the variable observable. What does that mean? We can listen to changes that this variable raises. Yes? And why are we doing this in the context of UI development or user interface development? To be able to use this powerful feature of binding. Is clear? The concept of property? So let me now jump super quick. Here it is. And to make this binding happy, because now it's really confused. It says, no, I cannot do this. Okay, so how can we solve this? Go back to our friend class, and instead of using a normal data types, or in this case, for example, int is a primitive data types or a normal data types we have been using since the start of this class, we will use the equivalent property data types. Yes? So instead of string, what I will call it? String property. Yeah, it's a class. And instead of int, integer property. Yes? Okay, now the constructor now is not happy. You are giving me a normal string, you are giving me an int, and you are asking me to put them in this strange properties that you have created there. So you need to help me do this. How can I do this? So I need to instantiate, because this one is now an object. It's no longer a normal little variable that I can just store values in. This is an object. When should I create this object? When should I create the property objects? When the actual friend object is instantiated. So this is my opportunity here. This is my golden opportunity to instantiate my object. So I will say here, new simple string property. And then what I pass to it? The name. You can see here, that's what I mentioned, that the property is nothing but a wrapping a normal data type. You can see here, it's wrapping it nicely. You know wrapping, yeah? Wrapping. Yeah. I don't have any wrapping. Okay, here is wrapping. So I take something and wrap it. That's what wrapping is. Okay? So what I'm doing here, what I'm doing with this variable, wrapping it into what? Into a property. Yes? Why I'm doing this? Don't forget the goal is to be able to do binding. It's a prerequisite to binding. I do the same with age. How do I wrap the age int into a property? I'll say here new simple integer property, and I'll give it the age. Yes? Now, okay, is the constructor happy? Yes, constructor is happy. Getters are not that happy. How can we make them happy?
Update the.
So I'll go to the property and say, please give me the value that you are wrapping. How do I ask property to give me the value? Get. That's it. Remember the property? Here it is, here it is. Here is the property, because now the X is wrapped. How do I extract the value that is stored inside the property? By using get. Okay, here it is. And the age, same thing, get. And the set is upset. How do I make it happy again? Set. And I'll give it the name. No, not set here. Sorry. That's not what I meant here. Yep, I go to the name property and say, oh, by the way, this is the value you should have now. And for the age, same thing, I go age.set and give it the value. Okay, everything is happy almost. No, in here, name, I can just put get name. This is better. And here I'll say get age. This is better, yeah? Are we done? Are we done or not yet? So to convert class attributes to properties, these are the steps we have been doing. Change the data type of attributes to property data types. For example, string becomes string property, int becomes integer property. Change the constructor method to instantiate and initialize the class properties. Yes, such as what we did. And then change the getters and setters to use get and set of properties. This is what we did. The last step is add public getter method consisting of the property name followed by this keyword or this word property. What it means here is I need to provide properties for this class. So I copy the attributes, copy them, and then make them kind of public. Yeah, and then put here the name of the attribute followed by the keyword property, and what this will return? Name. And here, how do I do it for the age? It is a public age, the name of the property, I add the keyword property. And how do I implement this? Return the age. Okay, so this one makes these properties accessible. Because remember, the get is not returning property. The set is not receiving a property, even the constructor. So I need to expose. I did all this hard work of having properties in my class. I need to make these properties accessible to the outside world. How do I make them accessible to the outside world? The convention is to use getter functions. What is the name of these getter functions? Name of the property followed by the keyword property, and then return the property. Okay? We could have used something like this. We could have used something like get name property. The convention is not this way. For the convention for normal get for the attribute, not the property, is get followed by the name of the attribute, and the first letter is uppercase. But for properties, what is the convention? Just very simple. The name of the attribute followed by the keyword property. Not keyword, sorry, just by the word property. Is clear? Okay. Now, once we do this, now we can make use of binding. You see here, this is the convention. Even JavaFX is following the convention. The name text field has one of the properties is called text property. And I want to bind it with what? with my friend object dot name property. Yeah, is it happy now? Now, is it a bidirectional binding or one-way binding? Are you sure one way? Okay, no problem. We'll follow your way and see. Okay, here it is. So no need for me to write these values. I just bind them. Text the age, I do the same for age. This is the age property. Bind with the age property. Yeah, because this one is text, this one is integer. I have to convert, so as a string. Happy? Okay, now because of the binding, I'm not supposed to do this anymore. No need. Yeah, it will be auto-reflected. The changes will be auto-reflected. Okay, let me run and try what we have been doing. The first step is fine. Everything is happy. But take a look at this. I'm not able to change anything. Because we made it one way, which means the values of this text field come only from the object. Changes to the text box are not reflected in the object. So we are using the wrong binding. Instead of doing it with two-way binding, I'm using one-way binding. So easy fix, no problem. We can fix it very easily. How we can fix this? Bind bidirectional. And then here, same thing, bind bidirectional. So bind bidirectional, and this one, because I need to give it an object to help with the conversion, as we discussed last time. It is basically number format dot get a number instance. Okay, so because this one is an integer property and this one is a text property, what I will do, I will give it an extra object to help the binding convert from integer to string and from string to integer. Okay, now if I run, no problem, everything is nicely done. All right, now when I save or when I submit, take a look at the friend when I submit, and you can see here the name has changed and the age has changed. Did I need to read again from the UI and save into the object? No. Okay. Are you following what's happening here? So what is the advantage of binding?
We can change.
It's much more concise. So instead of using event handler and event listeners, and actually doing it twice, reading from the object and assigning to the UI components and vice versa, we just define the binding once, and that's it. Yeah, and these two are kept synchronized. Is clear? Okay, let me show you that they are kept synchronized all the time, not just when I submit the button, when I click the submit button. Any change to the UI is reflected on the property and vice versa. That's the power of binding. So let me show you. To show you this, let me go back to the UI. Here is my UI. Let me add a label. Here is my label here. I'll right click here and say add a row above. And I'll put here a label. Here's my label. It's the label. Here it is. I put it here. And I will call this one. Okay, message label. Okay, message label. No, not this one. I mean in the code. Call it message label here. No, not here. Here, FXID, message label. And because I do Control S to save, because of the laziness, let me just copy this one and put it in my controller, yes? So my controller will become aware of this new label. Here is my label. And now what I want to do, okay, label is part of this package. It's part of the package, JavaFX package. Okay, in the initialization, what do I want to do with the label?
Set the text on the label.
No, no longer I do set, because if I do set, it will not be auto-updated. I need to do binding. Okay, so there are many ways of doing it. Let me do it one way. So I go to label. What did we call it? Message label. Message label dot text property. Text property, and here I can do bind. One way of doing it, I can do my friend. Oh, but toString is not a property, so I cannot do that. Okay, so what I can do is I can bind it to, no problem, yes. I can bind it to this guy, my friend dot a name property. Yes? Then followed by concat. Concatenate this with some, let's say some space, dot concatenate it again with my friend dot age property. Yes, are you following? So I'm taking this property binding, this message text property, and say whenever the name changes or the age changes, I want you to construct a string that has the name dash age and displays in the label. Yeah. Okay. Now if I run, let me close this, and if I run this, something didn't like it. Maybe it didn't like this one. Let's just try this way. Yep, can you see it here? Label. Um, as I type, can you see it as I type? It's changed. As I type, it does change. Here. Okay. Now for that space, let me see if I have as a string. No. Concat. Yeah, it concats with an object. There must be a way of doing it. Let me do it another way. Binding is another way of doing it. This is called binding expression. Concat. I want you to do binding concat. I want you to concatenate this guy. Then I want you to concatenate this and this. That's another way of doing it, yes? Yes, this is an expression. Let's try it before we make a conclusion. Okay, it's happy. Okay. Yep. It's clear? This is the power of binding. Once I create properties, I can take advantage of binding. So that's it. Let me show you. Now you have all the ingredients to really do your project and build something as complete as this example. This is the ultimate example that combines everything we have been studying for the last 3 weeks. Here's a list of objects. I display them in a table. You should by now know how to do this. If you haven't done the lab, you'll practice this more in the lab. If you have done it, hopefully you have already done this. Okay, and then you can click on any of the objects and say update. So when I say update, this is an object with properties. I take that object and bind it with the UI and show it in a dialog box. We call it a dialog box. This is a dialog box, a new window. You see here, as I make changes, you see there the row gets changed as I type. Because they are bind. The binding is going on there. Even without doing, it's already changed. Same for add. For add, the only difference with add and update, by the way, when you are using add and update, you should use the same form and the same code. The only difference between the two is that for add, you have an empty object. And for update, you have an object that's already instantiated. It already has some values. Yeah? But the logic is exactly the same. Except in here, when I add a new object, I take this object and add it to the list, and it shows up here. And because the list is observable, you remember observable list? Because the list of observable, once I take an object and add it to the observable list, magically it appears in the table view.